All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Nervous system. So this is a motor neuron. Motor means causing a muscle to do some sort of action, okay? So neurons are nerve cells, and they have some certain parts. They have a cell body, right? That's where your nucleus is right here, okay? Typically, these motor neurons are going to have multiple dendrites, okay? And dendrites, their role, so dendrites receive information. It's their role. And you have that one long axon. Axons send information. Okay. That's an important point I want to make sure that you catch here. Dendrites receive information, axons send information through a nerve impulse. All right, so you've got these coverings around the axon. These are called myelin sheaths. Myelin is a covering, okay? And what it does is for neurons that have it, it means that the signal just travels along the short segments without myelin, which these are called nodes of Ranvier. Okay, and that speeds up the action potential of the signal. Okay, and that signal goes to the end or terminal of the axon. Just like anybody ever been on an airplane? Anybody ever been to an airport? And they say you have to go to terminal K or C3. Those are the little places where things get sent out, right? Same thing with the neuron. This is the axon terminal, right? So, all right, clear the drawings. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the brain. Okay, this is a lateral view, right, or side view of the brain. So what I want you to see here has some lobes to it. And some of these names should seem familiar to you if you have learned about the parts of the skull and some of the bones, or the bones of the skull and muscles of the face, right? This is the frontal lobe, right? What bone is superficial to this? Frontal bone, right? What muscle is superficial to that? Frontalis, right? Okay, this is your parietal lobe. What bone is superficial to this lobe? Parietal lobe or parietal bone, right? It's the temporal lobe. What bone is superficial to the temporal lobe? Temporal bone. It's the occipital lobe. What bone is superficial to it? Occipital bone. All right. In this whole area up here, we call this the cerebrum. All right. So this top part of the brain, and you should all have a branch table so you can look at it. It is the cerebrum. Now this part here, it has a bunch of lines on it. This is the cerebellum. All right. So then we get to more of the brainstem. You have this little bulge here. We call it the pons. And then we have the medulla oblongata. So if you watch The Water Boy and talk about the medulla oblongata, that's what they're talking about. All right. So if you haven't seen it, maybe you go see it just to hear the word medulla oblongata. It's probably on Netflix or Hulu or something. Huh? Yes. So somebody's seen it. Good. All right. Don't feel too old. All right. Then you have the spinal cord. Okay. So information can be sent through the spinal cord to the brain and back from the brain to the spinal cord. Okay. Now, if we take a section of the brain, we have all of these ridges along the brain, right? So the raised parts, we call each of those a gyrus. And then the peaks are gyrus and the valleys are a sulcus. Okay. So the raised parts are gyrus, or plural is gyri. And then the depressions create a sulcus, or plural sulci. Okay. So if we were to take a sagittal section, see the interior of the brain. And this is your cerebrum, and this is half of your cerebrum. So we call it, in this line, we essentially call this the cerebral hemisphere, right? Because you know, like the hemisphere on the globe, it's like in the middle, right? So this is the middle, so it's the cerebral hemisphere. All right, and we got this big curved area here. We call that the corpus callosum, all right? So it is not the corpus Christi, it is the corpus callosum, all right? So then you got this big, it's not purple, but it's purple in the picture, oval. Call that the thalamus, okay? We also have some glands at the brain. We have the pineal gland. Okay, you'll learn more about that when we get to the endocrine system, as well as the pituitary gland is more anterior to the front of the brain. Okay, we'll also learn about that in the endocrine system. You have the hypothalamus, which is, remember, hypo is less than or lower, right? So it's lower than the thalamus. And you have the, what we call the optic chiasma, all right, or chiasma, right? And that's where, what we'll see later, the optic nerves come from your eyes, meet up before they go to the brain. All right. We also have what we call here a mammillary body. Okay. And then there's that bulge again. There's the pons and the medulla oblongata. Here's your cerebellum. Okay, on the inside, it looks all like a tree, right? So we do call this area arbor vitae. No, we don't really, not a huge thing you got to know, but call it that because it looks like a tree, right? Okay. Just talks about this optic chiasma or optic chiasm, right? So these are the optic nerves. These go to your eyes, so you can process the things that you're seeing. They meet up and form a chiasm, okay, before it goes to the brain. This is the olfactory bulb, which is kind of the ending of the olfactory nerve. Okay, so this is information going from your nose to the brain. All right. So this is the optic nerve. This is the optic chiasm where they meet. Okay, and these are cranial nerves that are highlighted. We call them cranial nerves because they go to the, what's the cranium for? Cranium's your head. What's in your head? Your brain, right? So these are nerves that directly go to the brain. But there are several of them, but the ones that we want you to know are the olfactory bulb, the optic nerve, and the optic chiasm. The optic chiasm is technically kind of the intersection of the optic nerves. Okay. Now there are also nerves that go feed into the spinal cord. Okay. Just like there were sections of the vertebrae, remember those? Remember we saw that we showed you cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, lumbar vertebrae, right? And you have the sacrum and the coccyx. So you have 7 cervical nerves, right? Like you have actually 8 cervical nerves, excuse me. All right, you have 12 thoracic nerves. Okay, and you have 5 lumbar nerves that come off and they go down here. Okay, and then you have 4 sacral nerves. All right, but the main thing is you want to be able to kind of know the sections. Okay, I'm not going to ask you, is this L3 or is this T4? But you generally need to know what section I'm referring to. Okay, so if I'm having something down here, don't say it's cervical, because cervical is up here. Does that make sense? All right. Okay. So what does the nervous system do? Well, nervous system helps you send, process, receive information, right? So in this case, you have sensory receptors in your eye receiving information. It provides sensory input, goes to a nerve, to an integration center in your brain. Okay, it goes through your brain, just through your spinal cord up to your brain. Well, actually, if it's in your eye, it's just going to go straight to your brain. All right, in this case, it's going to have a response at an effector, which is in your leg. Okay, so it's going to cause you to move based on what you see. And so it's going to, information to get to your leg is going to have to go through your spinal cord, right? It's going to go through your brain to your spinal cord to your leg, to the nerve that touches the muscle and cause your muscle to react. So this is basically how the nervous system works. You also have reflexes. Anybody ever been to the doctor and they hit your knee with the little piece of equipment there, right? So the patellar reflex, okay, when the doctor hits your knee, you have a receptor on your muscle, touching your muscle, since it's a sensory neuron because it's sensing information, also known as afferent. It's going to send information to your spinal cord. Okay, then this is a reflex, so it's not going to go to your brain. It's quick, right? It needs to be fast, so it doesn't go to your brain. Then it's going to connect our synapse with a motor neuron or efferent neuron, which is going to send signals back to the muscle and cause the muscle to contract and make your leg extend. Okay, this is basically a reflex pattern, right? So we call it a 2-neuron reflex arc because there's 2 neurons involved. But this is a sensory neuron, this is a motor neuron because the motor neuron's creating an action, right? On your nerves, parts of the spinal cord you need to know this area that is white is made up of white matter. Okay, this area that is off-white, we call that gray matter. Okay. This area in the middle, we call it a central canal. On your spinal cord, you have nerves that basically connect to the spinal cord. All right, so here's a spinal nerve, here's another one, and you have them on the other side as well. If you see a bulge, and some of you have these at your tables, if you see the bulge, we call this a dorsal root ganglion. Okay, it means it's dorsal, which means it goes toward the back of the body, right? Like the dorsal fin on a dolphin. All right, and this would be a ventral root. So this is the dorsal root and the ventral root. Okay, ventral means anterior or front. So this would be the person's front of the body. Okay, now your spinal cord has coverings, and your brain does too. All right, because you really wouldn't want your brain just to, not have any covering and any shielding because it would get damaged. So the outer layer is called dura mater. It's very durable, right? And it means tough. Dura means tough, right? This little webby layer, we call that arachnoid mater. Like arachnoid means spider web or spider, right? So it's arachnoid mater. And this deepest layer, we call that pia mater. Okay, so DAP, right, as you're going deeper, or PAD as you're going more superficial. All right, but the outer layer is dura mater, middle layer or intermediate layer is arachnoid, and the innermost or deepest layer is pia mater. All right, so that is the nervous system, okay, in a nutshell.